Hi, my name is Dahlia Walker, and this is my final presentation for my Principles of Speech class here at Roberts Wesleyan University. I'll be sharing with you the following. Which chapter of the textbook titled Exploring Public Speaking I like the most and why? What resonates with me in this chapter, sprinkled with ways that this chapter relates to and compares to one of my previous presentations, and ways that I can incorporate and apply the contents of this particular chapter in everyday life. Let's start off with which chapter I chose as the one I like the most. My favorite chapter is chapter 12, Informative Speaking. Why did I choose chapter 12, you ask? I'm glad you asked. I chose chapter 12 for two reasons. The learning objectives listed at the beginning of the chapter and the guidelines on page 243. I mentioned learning objectives on the previous slide. Each chapter in the text provides learning objectives at the beginning. I've listed here chapter 12's 4 learning objectives. Recognize opinion versus factual information. We're encouraged to be on the lookout for opinions disguised as factual information. Objective number 2, recognize the different types of informative speeches. I will share more on this further on, but this was the second of the 5 outcomes that we were to achieve. Objective number 3, decide on the best organizational approach for types of informative speeches. This is where one of the guidelines proved most helpful. Once I knew that my speech was to be a persuasive speech, I was able to determine how it was to be organized and structured, thanks to the author's instructions on page 243. The authors of the text encourages us to follow the guidelines, and I think that overall we were able to achieve these outcomes. Speaking of guidelines, let us look at a few of the guidelines for preparing the speech let us look at a few of the guidelines for preparing the speech that were very helpful from the text in chapter 12, and how they compared and related to my presentation, my persuasion presentation speech posted on YouTube on January 25th, 2025. The first one was to select a worthwhile topic that would engage my audience. It was the middle of February, and like me, my audience might be experiencing resolution exhaustion. The second one, don't be too broad. I narrowed the subject by focusing on a specific type of combat sport, Muay Thai, and not making it too broad. The third, another pointer from chapter 12, was not to assume that your audience knows what you're talking about. So I made sure to explain what Muay Thai was and how they could incorporate it into their fitness routines. I incorporated the fourth guideline when I shared my son's personal journey. That is to personalize ideas and suggestions. Citing, the authors stressed the importance of citing sources to prevent plagiarism, giving credit where credit is due. And I included a reference page here at the end of my presentation with the resources that I used. This slide gives us ways that we can incorporate and apply content from chapter 12 into our everyday life. I'd like to share these 4, 2 of the 4. The ultimate goal is not to confuse our audience. History. This is one type of informative speech. If I had to prepare a sermon for church, I would consult the reliable sources. Number 1, the Bible, and books and articles written by people who have studied the Bible extensively, making sure to cite the correct scriptures and references. Another type of informative speech is biography. You would write a biography when you're introducing a guest speaker, sharing a eulogy or an obituary, as I did for my brother. And you would be sharing facts about a person's life, place of birth, schooling, marriage, children, etc. All of the tips and guidelines we learned will help us to achieve the main goal, not to confuse our audience. Page 244 gave an example of baking cookies. You must mention the ingredients before mixing and baking instructions are shared. That was a good analogy. Lastly, ever important, references. It is critical to cite. Thank you for being on this journey with me as we learn to become better public speakers and not be so terrified of doing it. And all these tools and pointers that we learned would hopefully help us to progress further in life and as students here at Roberts. Please feel free to email me or contact me. Thank you so much and God bless.